Ioana Busiak is getting married in September. The diamond in her engagement ring, it's not billions of years old. It was grown in a lab, and she loves it.
Not a single person has been like, oh, is that a real diamond? And if somebody did ask me that, I wouldn't be ashamed to say that, no, it's not a real diamond. It's lab grown, and it doesn't make it any less valuable, because to me, this is priceless.
Value is in the eye of the beholder. And that could be bad news for the diamond business. Hi, I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. The diamond industry is at a crossroads. Lab-grown diamonds are taking a big bite out of sales and raising a question fundamental to the industry's future. What do we really value about diamonds? Also today, the sounds of spring. Birds chirping, kids playing, and on the front door. 'Tis the season for door-to-door sales. But why? Up first, fortune favors the bold, so let's check in on the economy. We can say this for Canada's economy. At least we know a bit more now than we did a few months ago. Trump hasn't followed through on the worst of his tariff threats. We have a new federal government post-election, so that's settled. What we don't know, are we heading into a recession, or could we already be in one? That's still TBD. But now that some of the dust seems to be settling, let's talk to Armine Yalnizyan to find out where she thinks the economy's at halfway through what's been a very weird year. She's an economist and the Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers. Hi, Armine.
Hi, Paul.
So, Armine, if you could pick one word to sum up the state of Canada's economy right now, what would that be?
Uncertain.
Still uncertain?
Yeah,
I just said we have more certainty. We're still uncertain?
100% we're uncertain, and we will be uncertain as long as the uncertainty master-in-chief remains in office in the United States, because we have no idea what's going to happen in 5 minutes, much less in 6 months.
What do you think about the idea of a recession? Either the idea that we're already in a recession right now and just don't know it, or if we're not, we might be in one soon. Are you in that camp that thinks, yeah, that's sort of where we're headed?
I can't see how this degree of uncertainty wouldn't cause economies to kind of freeze and shrink, because they're kind of staying stock still. And we will know for sure, according to official statistics, by August the 29th, when both Statistics Canada and the United States publishes their second quarter results. And that's what a recession typically means, 2 back-to-back quarters of a shrinking economy. Should we head into this period of economic contraction, we are likely to see a longer duration than just 2 back-to-back quarters, because of the degree of uncertainty that is constantly being unleashed from the White House.
What do you see in terms of the indicators that you watch? Are you looking at anything right now that particularly has your attention to give you a sense of where we're at right now?
Oh, 100%. We get monthly reports on trade balances. So how much are we importing and exporting? Don't forget, imports are a drag on our domestic growth. Exports are a boost to our domestic growth. How much has this freeze effect, because of uncertainty, affected what we are doing? Well, we can see that in monthly statistics on unemployment and employment. We can see that from shipping statistics. We can see it from trade statistics. We can see it from monthly GDP statistics by industry, and also that indicate what businesses are spending on machinery and equipment. So all of these things line up in one direction, and one direction alone, Paul, which is things are slowing down. And if you take a look at the last official statistics from Statistics Canada, the economy was slowing all through 2004 as well. So when you start with a number that is very close to zero, it takes almost nothing to trip over into a recession.
So, I mean, it definitely sounds like Trump, trade, uncertainty is at the top of Armine's, big list of worries for the economy. But if you started to think about, what's below that, what's in second place, are there other things that are sort of floating to the top here for you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I found it striking that the throne speech excluded one of the things that was in the Liberal platform, whereas they seem to have everything else from the Liberal platform in there. And that was the promise to fix EI over the course of the next year. EI is an automatic stabilizer. We pay premiums into it as workers and as employers because if you reduce the depth and length of a recession, it's good for both workers and for employers. And that's because you're maintaining some degree of purchasing power when you get a broad-based shock to the system. As of the latest stats, we were covering just over a third, 35% of the unemployed received jobless benefits. That's the lowest level in history, and that's history going back to 1941 when we implemented the program. When you don't have an automatic stabilizer, Paul, you guarantee that the recession that is underway will be longer and deeper than it otherwise needs to be. And I was really shocked that this same government, the Liberals that have been promising EI reforms since 2015 before they formed government and still have not delivered. And if this recession is as bad as I think it's going to be, and as many people are predicting, we are not recession ready, and it's going to be worse than it needs to be because of an own goal, because we refuse to fix what we have to help us get through these things.
Well, something that Mark Carney's been talking about is big nation-building projects. This generally is in association with infrastructure projects. We're talking railways and ports and airports and things like that. Do you think that's what the economy needs right now? Because it feels like that's one of the paths the government wants to go down.
I have to agree that that is the path we have to go down because for the first time since the Second World War, Canada's economy, which has developed largely as a branch plant of the United States when it comes to industrial production and industrial investment, we need to disentangle from the U.S., who has become an absolutely unreliable and actually vexatious partner, economically speaking, and in terms of politics. So disentangling from the United States is harder for Canada than for any other country on the surface of the planet. We are more intertwined than any other nation, and it's like unscrambling a plate of eggs, but that's the direction in which we're going to have to go, is figuring out what our supply chains are going to be, what our trading partners are going to be, and how we're going to meet our own energy needs and needs for inputs for our own industrial production that aren't as reliant on the United States. We will not completely decouple, but that project of nation building is absolutely essential to our economic sovereignty. Otherwise, the investors will come and we will be a 51st state in economic terms wrapped in a Canadian flag.
All right. Well, if that's the future we want to avoid, then if you think about government's role in this and the federal government's role in this from a spending perspective, Armine, given what you've heard from this new government so far, if you were to look at things on a spectrum, on a scale of austerity-loving fiscal hawks to big government spendthrifts, where would you put this new government?
I think it sounds like it's more austerity driven than it is, but he is tending more blue than the Trudeau government. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, because I think you do need to meet the moment, which is going to require a whole lot of spending. And whereas Canada's fiscal position is the envy of the world, we're the best positioned in terms of debt to GDP in the G7. And we've got a better credit rating now than the United States, and we have never been downgraded despite all this spending. So we are sitting very well in terms of having the capacity to borrow more to do the things we need to do.
Well, we've talked a bunch about what worries you. What gives you some hope for the economy right now?
I actually find that the new federal leadership is a very hopeful sign. I think it's exactly the right mix of messaging about confidence and know-how And I think that's a really good place to be at mentally as you try and recreate and reimagine the future of the nation to be more independent and more vibrant in many ways. I just hope that that future is a progressive one. And by that, I mean more people gain from the benefits of all the money that is going to be expended than just a handful of business investors.
Well, finally, Armine, last question for you. We started talking about certainty and uncertainty. Do you think at this moment, halfway through the year, we're any closer to any kind of certainty that you'd like to see on any of these big files than we were a couple months ago?
Unfortunately, no, because you don't know what the guy south of the border is going to do. But I think what's coming clear is that there is more determination to carve our own future. And I am certain that we will come out the other side of this incredibly turbulent passage of time, actually understanding ourselves and knowing ourselves and doing more for ourselves than we have in decades.
Well, Armine, I'll look forward to talking to you when we're on the other side, if not before.
Yeah. Thank you very much for reaching out, Paul.
Armine Yalnizyan is an economist and the Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers. On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Think about a classic traveling salesman, peddling encyclopedias, vacuum cleaners. That kind of selling has now largely gone digital. We have affiliate links, sponsored content, influencers. And why not? You can sell to the whole world from the comfort of your couch. But if that's the case, why are so many people still out there knocking on your front door?
Yes. Hey, how's it going?
Good.
My name's Owen. I'm just a student at Dalhousie.
Owen Chilvers is working on his sales technique. This summer, he's running his own painting business. He's going door to door in Halifax, and it's tough work.
Some people just kind of say no, immediately close the door on you. But again, you just go to the next door, positive attitude. Again, 10 no's for every yes. Sometimes it's 20 no's for every yes.
At this time of year, you're more likely to get a knock on the door from people offering to do all of those jobs around the house that aren't going to get done themselves. Painting, power washing, landscaping, window cleaning, deck sanding, gutter clearing, and lawn care. Brendan Quinlan runs Vantage, a pest control company. He says selling door-to-door works well if you're offering to do jobs that are outside.
You can walk the customer around the house. We can go through the maintenance that's required. You can go through the service, explain how it works, and all of that can happen from outside of the home.
It's a marketing method that goes way back.
The house-to-house salesman symbolizes in a way the function of all salesmen.
But that was last century. These days, there are so many other ways to reach people. Email, online ads, telemarketing, and social media. Why would anyone still go door to door?
I think people are not answering calls and numbers they don't recognize due to the fact that they get spam calls all the time. When we go face-to-face with our customer, we have our ID badges on, and I think there's a better trust factor there.
But that trust isn't total. Brendan says even at the door, people are suspicious of scams and often pull out their phones to check his company's reputation online.
They'll pull up the reviews on the site as we're talking to them, and I feel like that's the average consumer now. Most people, when we knock their door, their phone's in their hand.
Nicole Rourke is a marketing professor at St. Clair College in Windsor, Ontario. She says door-to-door does have some advantages for sellers. She says when people are face-to-face, basic social etiquette kicks in.
It's much harder to say no to somebody when they're, standing in front of your house.
And if customers do say no, they often feel they have to give a reason.
And it's much easier when you get that reason to boomerang it back and say, oh, no, that's no issue. We can get it in blue. We can deliver it next week. We can, give you a finance plan. So depending on the objection, it's much easier to address that in person.
Well, it's not that easy. Owen Chilvers says people often don't like being bothered at home, especially at dinner, and they're not shy about letting him know.
People will be rude to you, and that's something that you just got to live with.
So you have to have a bit of a thick skin.
100%. It's not for the weak. Most of my door knockers have quit, if I'm going to be honest.
But Owen keeps going.
We should probably go to this nice wood house over here.
And he's already learning some of the tricks of the trade.
What projects could we take off your hands this summer?
He asks open-ended questions like, hey, what do you need doing around the house? And he always looks around the house first to see what needs work, including the deck he's standing on.
We were walking by and noticed that the deck's looking a little rough. If you've ever thought about staining?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested in getting
And just like that, Owen has a new customer.
I was ready to open the door and just say, no thanks, I'm not interested. But as soon as he said, we noticed your deck, I thought, oh, okay.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Blair Sanderson.
This is The Cost of Living. Listen to us on CBC Radio 1 or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Ioana Busiak was on vacation in Portugal with her best friend and her boyfriend. They were having dinner at a restaurant by the beach. She's staring at the ocean, and then...
all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my friend was rushing me to finish my sangria. She's just like, you should chug your drink. So I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, kind of weird, but I didn't think anything of it. And then both of them, Jason and my best friend, were starting to hurry me even more.
They really wanted her to get down to the beach.
They were like, we've got to catch the sunset. Mind you, the sun hadn't even started setting at this point. So I was like, we have so much time, guys. There's no rush at all.
But she goes with them, and she pulls out her phone, starts taking video of the ocean, the birds. She turns the camera towards her boyfriend.
And Jason's on one knee. And I stopped the video because I was like, oh my God, this is happening. So I basically just have one clip of him on his knee and it's the ring.
It wasn't a total surprise. They had talked about getting married. They'd even looked at engagement rings. And that was when a different question was popped. Would she buy a natural diamond or one grown in a lab?
Part of me definitely originally leaned more towards natural diamonds because mostly just the value of a natural diamond. I knew it was going to be more than a lab-grown diamond, but again, I didn't know the discrepancy was going to be that significant. So I was leaning more towards that because I was thinking if I pass this on to my children one day, if they need if they have an emergency, that's something that they can sell for a lot of money.
So what did she end up choosing?
I went with a lab-grown.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
It's a 1.5 carat emerald cut. And Ioana, she doesn't care that it came from a lab and not the earth. Lab-grown diamonds have put the industry at a crossroads. The price of diamonds is falling, so are profits. The biggest name in the business, De Beers, is on the sales block, but so far, no takers. Diamonds now face a question that haunts every luxury item. Why do we value them at all? To make a lab-grown diamond, you start with a tiny little bit of carbon. It's called a carbon seed. You put that into a microwave and then blast it with so much heat that the carbon atoms floating nearby start to stick onto the seed. Think about it like layering on coats of lacquer, and the little seed just gets bigger and bigger. When it's done, you have a diamond with the same chemical makeup as the real McCoy. Only this takes weeks instead of billions of years. They've been making diamonds like this since the 1950s. But it wasn't until 10 years ago that the technology really leveled up. The quality of the diamonds improved, demand started going up, and now, if you want a diamond, even a honkin' big J-Lo style rock, no problem.
with natural diamonds, you would rarely see a 3, 4, 5 carat, because I mean, that's $100,000 diamond. I mean, that's not the sort of thing you would wear because it's so valuable. But now with the man-made diamonds, go to a wedding and everybody there has like 3, 4, 5 carat diamonds. So that's kind of the new, development. I think we're getting to the point where if you see a really big diamond, people just assume it's a lab-grown diamond.
Paul Zimnisky is an independent diamond analyst. He's had a front row seat to the rise of lab-grown diamonds, and it's been fast. Supply, he says, has basically doubled every 2 years since 2015.
So we went from maybe just a couple million rough carats, if that, 10 years ago to, over 30 million rough carats today. Theoretically, we can produce, as many as we want in the size, the color, the clarities that we want.
Lab-grown diamonds now make up nearly 40% of total diamond sales. You can get a lab-grown diamond of the same size and quality as a natural stone for 1/10 the price. And you can buy it at Walmart. So, could this be the beginning of the end for natural diamonds? Paul Zimnisky says, maybe. But he also says, don't count out the diamond industry.
The major players have done a very good job of maintaining desire for its product. I mean, the diamond industry is famous for having one of the most successful marketing campaigns in modern consumer history. And that's not a coincidence. I mean, that success has kept diamonds extremely relevant.
De Beers? It was founded in the 19th century. That's when a rush of production from new mines threatened to tank prices. So De Beers took control of the diamond trade, making sure supply matched demand. Its marketing campaign, as Paul said, is the stuff of legend. It shaped how we think about diamonds, basically invented the idea of a diamond engagement ring. Romance, marriage, eternal love. De Beers wanted all of that wrapped up in diamonds.
The diamond engagement ring. How else could 2 months' salary last forever? A diamond.
They covered the rich and famous in rocks to make us covet them. Marilyn Monroe in a hot pink dress singing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend.
Cartier.
That was OG silver screen product placement. The decades spent manufacturing desire for diamonds worked. But with a catch. For us to value them the way the industry wants us to, we need to believe they're precious.
We're sort of wired to really, really rivet our attention to things that become scarce.
Rebecca Ratner is a marketing professor at the University of Maryland. She says diamonds trade on our primitive instinct to own rare things.
Evolutionary psychologists will tell you that it relates to sort of a time when we needed to be really attuned to scarcity. If you have enough food or resources to sort of survive, on the savannah, then that's fine. But if suddenly you realize the supply of food has started to go down, then you really need to pay attention to where you're going to get your next meal because your survival depends on it.
So the diamond industry is tapping into instincts that live deep inside our consumer hearts.
When people perceive items as scarce, they experience physiological arousal. So it's like exactly that sort of fight or flight that an evolutionary psychologist would talk about. And they've got the bling, right? They're beautiful, they're sparkly. So they have sort of some inherent appeal to them, I would say. And then when you add on to it that it's scarce, that makes it just super exciting to want to get your hands on it.
That's what's happening internally. We can also care about what other people think about us. And when we have something that feels exclusive, a Birkin bag or a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle bourbon, that can play into our desire for social status. In that way, diamonds have a lot in common with sneakerheads lining up around the block for a shot at a rare shoe drop.
The luxury industry very much is tapping into people's motivation to convey something positive about themselves to other people. And you can convey it very easily. If you've got that designer bag or the designer shirt, you can convey things to people who are, 20 feet away from you and they just see you walking.
If the allure of natural diamonds comes in part from their scarcity, will they mean the same thing when they're right next to an unlimited supply of lab-grown diamonds? Rebecca says the industry's next and maybe greatest trick will be to differentiate natural from lab-grown in the hearts and minds of consumers.
If the lab-grown ones are sold as lab-grown diamonds and they're not sold as sort of authentic from the earth diamonds, my guess is that they will not be valued as much by people. So we know that authenticity is really important to consumers. And so that's sort of the story of like, where did my ring come from? I think that's going to be really meaningful to a lot of consumers.
Stuff is only worth as much as someone is willing to pay for it. For more than a century, the diamond industry has convinced us that diamonds are worth it. But buyers are changing. Joanna Busiak's diamond didn't come from the earth, and she still loves it.
Not a single person has been like, oh, is that a real diamond? So, and if somebody did ask me that, I wouldn't be ashamed to say that, no, it's not a real diamond. It's lab grown, and it doesn't make it any less valuable because, you know, their perception of the value doesn't necessarily align with my perception of the value, because to me, this is priceless.
Hey, diamonds may still be forever, even if they're grown in a lab. On last week's show, we talked about the economic cost of potholes. And Danielle Nerman, we asked listeners who feel feelings about potholes to, you know, because why not, send us a haiku.
Yeah, and you guys didn't disappoint. You are so poetic.
They are.
So many amazing haikus. Let's start with this one from Carol in Prince Rupert, BC. Winter sighs and heaves, challenging wheel alignment, emptiness to fill.
Pensive.
And Claire in Edmonton emailed us this beauty. Mom, the kids shout as I navigate potholes like summer moguls.
But you didn't stop there.
My wheel alignment is not so well aligned now that spring has arrived.
Montreal potholes, jostling crowded buses. I prefer metro.
Pothole, dear pothole, I grit my teeth whenever you embrace me close.
Thanks to everyone who wrote and called in your pothole haikus.
I am sending you all cost of living ball caps. They're already in the mail.
That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Blair Sanderson, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Thanks for listening.